It's August 20th, 2013, and another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Arion, Rebecca, and Olly, the Retrospectors.
So it was on this day, or more accurately on this evening, that the Morgan Spurlock documentary about One Direction, This Is Us, had its premiere at London's Odeon Leicester Square. Around 10,000 Directioners were there, with extra police who didn't have a cute nickname being called in to cope with the accompanying crowds. Some of the fans had slept rough for 3 nights in the hope of catching
Morgan Spurlock.
Yeah. They were all there for Spurlock. And the film went on to take $18 million in the US Labor Day opening weekend, which is good for a documentary. Didn't quite beat the Justin Bieber one.
Never say never.
Well, yes, maybe one day it'll overtake it. Oh, that was the name of the documentary. But considering it is just basically some behind-the-scenes footage and a concert movie, is pretty impressive going and speaks to the enormous popularity of the band at the time.
But it is a bit underwhelming. It's $68 million worldwide gross of the One Direction movie, considering that the year's number 1 and number 2 films, which were Frozen and Iron Man, both grossed well over $1 billion.
Maybe at this point in One Direction propaganda, they were just like, anything makes money. It doesn't really matter what it is. Just chuck it out there. I mean, even the whole inclusion of Morgan Spurlock seems weird and anomalous to me. I don't quite know how he got signed up to it, given his kind of career history to that point.
He was best known at the time, and probably still now, for making the Supersize Me movie, which, if like me, you were a teenager at the height of the child obesity panic, you probably were forced to watch at school.
He'd put himself forward to direct Never Say Never and not got the gig. So he'd made it clear that he was interested in tracking the meteoric rise of a pop star. And so was in the purview of the producers, that's why.
Yes.
But also I think it gave it credibility, like because he was an Oscar-nominated filmmaker, people like me were more inclined to watch the One Direction movie because he'd made it. Like I was intrigued, like why would he want to make this film? And I'll admit, I did watch it on a plane after I'd had 3 brandies, so my guard was down.
I'm just picturing all those teenage girls sleeping rough outside the cinema and Olly on a plane in some kind of padded velvet dressing gown with a little balloon glass of brandy watching it.
Yeah. But I did watch it because I liked it on a plane. I like to watch anything that's not going to cause me any anxiety or make me think about impending death, and this definitely fitted that bill. I did watch all of it and enjoy it, and you can see that a serious documentary maker is behind the camera. I mean, just there's a lot with the parents, which I think wouldn't have been an obvious thing to do for everybody. And I remember in particular Liam's dad being just really wistful. I mean, they only allowed this to be in the film for about 15 seconds, but being really wistful about the fact that they left the house to go to an audition and never came home. Liam Payne had only been back home, bearing in mind he left the house when he was 16 to go and audition for the X Factor. He'd only been home for 5 nights in 3 years.
Yeah.
And he was on the verge of tears, like recalling that he'd missed this chance to basically father his son. And also there's this moment where his mum bought a cardboard cutout of him so that he could be in the house.
Oh, wow.
Which, again, just little glimpses of the realities of, like, you know, what that is.
Yeah, but it's interesting that you were saying earlier about, you know, how essentially this film is just them singing and then a few glimpses at life behind the scenes. But that is just exactly what the audience wanted. This is exactly what One Direction was selling their fan base, as this idea that they're cheeky chappies, they've got their own personalities, you know, they're a different kind of pop star. They're not like the, you know, the Westlife or the Boyzone where they've been sort of manicured and presented to you. Of course they actually, you know, had been, but they were selling this idea, especially because they had social media, which was like a kind of new phenomenon, you know, changing the way that celebrities interacted with their fans. They were selling you this idea that we are literally the boys next door. We are almost within your reach.
Yeah. I mean, that thing that Liam's dad said about Liam leaving home and then never coming back resonates as well on the flip side of it with what the guys themselves must have experienced. You know, they turned up to go on this show. Probably you do hope that it might take you towards fame and fortune, but I don't think any of them in their wildest dreams could have imagined what happened to them. And I read one piece of commentary that said it would be like waking up one day and being ripped, but having to do the corresponding amount of exercise every single day of your life to stay ripped from then on. And that must have been what it was like, that they sort of rocked up to the audition and then suddenly you you were doing vocal stuff and you were doing dancing and you were learning instruments and you were having to deal with the newfound trappings of fame.
And it's worth noting as well that they were put together as individuals who didn't know each other previously for the 2010 series The X Factor, and they finished third behind Matt Cardle and Rebecca Ferguson.
Which is glossed over in this movie, by the way. So a clip is shown of when they come third to Rebecca Ferguson, but it's not made clear that that's not them coming second. No mention at all is made of Matt Cardle. And I think specifically because, do you remember what happened at the moment that Matt Cardle won the X Factor, Rebecca?
No, but it rings a bell.
Harry Styles leaned into his ear and said, "Think how much you're going to get." That's what happened. After
He's
Matt
the
Cardle
classy
was
one.
winner of the X Factor. Which I think is absolutely the clip that I would put in my One Direction documentary, but it was very much missing.
I got to say, though, it makes sense because obviously a massive portion of their fan base were not from the UK, and would, specifically a lot of them were from the US, where the X Factor wouldn't have meant anything to them. And also it made me think One Direction weren't the last group to be formed via TV, because Little Mix went on to win the X Factor afterwards, but they were the last group to emerge purely from TV. Twitter existed, Tumblr existed, but those things wouldn't make them famous until they started expanding into the US market. When they were solely a kind of UK phenomenon, it was through the TV show.
Kind of, but I mean...
Are you just going to undermine my point?
Well, the thing that I think made it obvious that they had traction, the reason that so much money was spent on them, giving them that... I mean, let's be honest, that song, You Don't Know You're Beautiful, it was quite interesting watching this documentary again last night.
Banger.
It's a banger. And watching this documentary again, you realise how many of their songs aren't. It's only been 8 years since I heard those songs on the radio all the time, and I don't remember them. I sort of now when you hear a bit of them, you're like, oh yeah, best song ever, that was a one. And you sort of remember the videos, don't you? Because they're cute and they look like Labrador puppies, but you don't really remember the actual songs, apart from You Don't Know You're Beautiful, which is an absolute banger. And the only reason they were given that song is because it was clear that the fan base wanted it. And it was clear the fan base wanted it because of Twitter. All the behind-the-scenes videos on the X Factor were the thing that made it obvious they had momentum, even though they came third, as a proposition.
They encapsulate something of that combination of calculation and raw luck that it requires if a band emerges in the way that these guys did to really rise to the top. Because, obviously this wasn't just a random thing. Simon Cowell had in his mind that he was going to pluck a number of the guys and put them together and then create something larger. And, it had been about 10 years since the last boy band, the heyday of NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, and the world was ready for a new boy band to come along.
Although I remember watching the X Factor when they were put together, and it was presented in the TV programme very much as Nicole Scherzinger's idea. And again, in this documentary, Simon Cowell takes ownership of the idea and she's not mentioned at all. So I don't know what the truth is. Probably somewhere between those two things, I dare say.
But I think that regardless of who had come up with the concept, they were also lucky to just sort of strike on a bunch of people who had these quite lovable personalities, that they were intensely likable, they were quite funny, and they gelled well. And I think that is also a huge part of what made them successful. Yeah,
it was this idea that they all had their own persona. And obviously that's not new. It was the same with the Beatles, obviously. People had their favourite Beatle. But, the apparatus surrounding One Direction really leaned into this idea that almost like they were collectible toys in the same series. Each one came with their own accessories. But Caroline Watson, who was the band's original stylist, said that she was inspired by the Spice Girls using the costuming to give each member their individual personality, rather than, what had come before, like your Boyzones and Westlifes.
Yeah, Westlife are like a clone of each other, aren't they?
Yeah. Just all sitting on matching stools in matching clothes, doing matching routines. That was another thing about One Direction. They didn't do choreographed dance routines.
Except they did, as the documentary shows you, they choreographed the dances to look unchoreographed.
Just a weird extra thing about Morgan Spurlock. He also did this documentary that was called Where in the World is Osama Bin Laden, which he did in 2008. And it was in his trademark style of being half serious, half jokey. But apparently after Osama Bin Laden was killed, the CIA revealed that he had a copy of Morgan Spurlock's Where in the World is Osama Bin Laden at his hideout in Abbottabad in Pakistan. So he found it. I guess that's sort of amusing if you're Osama Bin Laden.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know what's amusing if you're Osama Bin Laden, but you'd be keen on the coverage.
It would make a nice gift from your children, say.
I'm guessing that there were fewer shots of Osama Bin Laden in his pants than they were of Harry Styles in This Is Us.
Probably.
Probably fewer getting changed before the gig shots.
Tomorrow.
It was the largest recorded slave revolt since Spartacus.
Ditch the ads and get a Sunday episode when you join Club Retrospectors. Patreon.com/Retrospectors.